Hello, today we are going to talk about the differences between clauses and phrases, and then after we do that, we are also going to talk about sentence fragments. So first off, a clause is a group of words that has a subject and a verb, so someone doing something, and then a phrase is a group of words that does not have a subject and a verb. Now, on the left-hand side of this slide, you will see a breakdown of the organizational tools inside of the English language, and specifically at the bottom we have words, and that works all the way up to paragraphs. You might be able to argue that we could go a little bit lower than words. Maybe you could say syllables at the bottom, and you could also probably argue that we can go a little bit higher than paragraphs, but for our purposes today, this will differentiate between some of the organizational structures that we have in English. So at the very bottom, we have words. Just one word. That is the smallest unit that we'll talk about today. Above that, though, we have phrases, and phrases are simply a group of words that work together. Now, phrases do not have a subject and verb in them. They're just two or three words that kind of go together. Clauses, on the other hand, are a group of words that do have a subject and verb. So they're similar to a phrase, but they have someone who is doing something. Next up on that ladder, we have sentences, and sentences are a complete thought that have a subject and a verb. So some clauses can actually be sentences, others cannot. And we're going to look at the differences between those in just a moment. And then obviously at the top, we have paragraphs, which is a collection of sentences that work together. Now, in English, we have two main clauses that you need to know about. First off, there are independent clauses, and then there are dependent clauses. Independent clauses are clauses that form a complete thought and can stand on their own. So just as the name implies, they can work independently. Therefore, they are independent clauses. So all you need to know for an independent clause is that is essentially a complete sentence by itself. A dependent clause, on the other hand, depends on extra information. It cannot be a sentence on its own. And primarily, dependent clauses are usually just incomplete thoughts. So we still have a subject and verb. They just don't make sense by themselves. So an independent clause can be a sentence by itself. A dependent clause cannot. And we will look at some examples of those. Now we have two examples here. The first one is an independent clause. The man went to the store to buy bread and milk. By itself, that sentence or that clause can be a sentence. We could just toss a period at the end and it would work. It would make sense on its own. Therefore, it is an independent clause. Our next example, though, says, although he went to the store, and that can't be a complete thought by itself. That doesn't quite make sense on its own. It depends on more information. We're looking for a second half of that thought in order for it to be complete. We can't just say, although he went to the store, and then stop like that. That doesn't quite work. And because of that reason, this is going to be a dependent clause. Now, when we talk about clauses, this all kind of builds up into the idea of sentence fragments. And sentence fragments are a grammatical error where we have a sentence that is actually not a complete sentence. So sentence fragments just means that we're looking at a fragment of a sentence or an incomplete part of a sentence. Specifically, sentences need three elements in order to be considered complete. First off, they need a subject and a verb, but second off, they also need to be a complete thought, which basically just means they need to be able to stand on their own without any extra support. Let's look at some examples, though. On the very top, we have a fragment. Although he went to the store. Now, we already looked at that example. The reason why this is a fragment is because of the word although. Although starts dependent clauses, and we learned earlier that dependent clauses cannot be sentences by themselves. So because of that, this sentence doesn't work. If we read this, naturally we would want some more information. Although he went to the store, what? What happened after that? Why did he go to the store even though he wasn't supposed to for some unknown reason? Like, we need more information for this to make sense. Our next sentence down is also a fragment. Told the mechanic to fix his car. Now, this one is a fragment because we are missing the subject of the sentence. We don't know who told the mechanic to fix the car. Therefore, we have an incomplete sentence. We have a verb, but we don't have a subject. And because we don't have a subject, it's not a complete thought. At the very bottom, though, we have a complete sentence. He walked to the car. Now, this is something that I want to emphasize. Just because it is short does not make it a fragment. Similarly, just because it is long, that does not mean that it is a complete sentence. We need to look at the three parts that we looked at before. Does the sentence have a subject? Does it have a verb? Is it a complete thought? If it has those things, then it is, in fact, a complete sentence. Here are some more examples. Vincent Richardson reported for duty at a Chicago police station, telling the officers that he was being transferred for the day from another police district. Now, this one does not work because we have a sentence fragment as our second sentence, excuse me. Now, this is typically when we see sentence fragments. Usually people don't naturally write sentence fragments independently. We typically see them following another sentence. The problem here is that if we separated the sentences out and we only look at the second sentence, telling the other officers he was being transferred for the day from another police district, that cannot stand independently. Therefore, it is not a complete sentence. In order to fix that, we would look at the bottom passage, which says Vincent Richardson reported for duty at a Chicago police station. He told the other officers that he was being transferred for the day from another police district. Now, in this corrected version, we have added the subject of our sentence, which has therefore completed the sentence, making it so that it is no longer a sentence fragment. That is all I have for you today. Today we talked about clauses and phrases, and then we talked about sentence fragments. If you have any questions, make sure to watch the video again, but thank you so much for watching.